Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. Max Fried returned to the mound last night, and he was spectacular. I'm not going to lie. You always kind of wonder if there's going to be any worseness. Like, is he going to come back looking like the same guy? But he came back, and I thought he looked just about as good as you'll ever see him. I mean, he was touching 98 on the radar gun. Everything, his fastball was in the high 90s. His cutters was really sharp. His slider was nasty. His changeup was filthy, and his curveball was as good as it possibly can look. The Padres almost missed his curveball at least 8 different times, and they just barely nicked it away. He could have had a lot more strikeouts, but everything was weak contact. And to be honest, he looked like a guy who could win an NL Cy Young.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Fried yesterday. I'm just happy he looked healthy. You mentioned this in your article. It looked like he was on a bit of a pitch count there. He finished with 79. He easily could have went 2 or 3 more innings if he was healthy. I mean, he maybe could have even finished the game. But he did a good job because it's a tough San Diego lineup at the top. He didn't walk anybody. That was really important. And you said, I think they had 4 hits. 2 of them were pretty soft contact.
Yeah, infield hits, basically.
Yeah, he was touching 98. He looked good to go. And that's a really big sigh of relief for a team that has had so many injuries and just a lot of bad luck to start the year. But despite that, they lost 3 of 4 to San Diego. They lost 1 game to Washington when Jared Schuster started. And other than that, they have not lost a ball game.
Yeah, and I know it was a hamstring injury, so it's not as big of a deal as an arm injury, but he didn't make one rehab start, not even anything, and just came out against, one of the best lineups in baseball and just toasted him. I think impressive is an understatement. I mean, what he did, he came out from the get-go, shut him down. It was almost unbelievable for what, he's been out, 2 weeks-ish? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say unbelievable because it's Max Fried, and that just kind of is who he is. And he faced the Padres, who were the guys who traded him away, back in 2014 for Justin Upton. And even though he never even pitched for the Padres, he likes to kind of stick it back to him. Like, he's definitely the kind of competitor that, yeah, you traded me away. Like, that was dumb. I think the last time he pitched against the Padres,
it was a complete game shutout.
He threw a complete game shutout. 5 more innings of shutout ball against a much better lineup this time around. But he looked unreal. And frankly, the weird thing about Max Fried to me is I never thought he was going to get to the point that he was at last year. I always thought he was good, borderline ace, a solid number 2. But he just seems to get better every single season. And it's he adds a little more cut to it. He adds another pitch. He increases his velocity. He just gets better, and he's got the mentality of a great pitcher. And it's getting to the point where he might not just be the best lefty, he might be the best pitcher in the National League. And he finished second in the NL Cy Young race last year. But if he pitches if he keeps flashing that stuff he showed last night, and I know it was only 5 innings, he's got a chance to win it this year.
Yeah, and we talked about too, the possibility of losing him in free agency. I don't think he's getting to a point now. I don't think the Braves can afford to let that happen, especially if he keeps up this pace. And it's pretty much impossible to keep up this pace considering he's given up 1 run in 9 innings, and an injury-shortened start in which he probably would even have a lower ERA. But that's the thing with this kid, man. He's just a competitor. We saw it in the World Series. He got his ankle stopped on, and he comes out and shuts him out for the next 5.5 innings. He's just ridiculous. And that's the kind of guy, he will be, I think, 31. I'm comfortable giving him an extension this offseason. I really hope they do. I don't care if it's team friendly or not. I want this guy on this team. And it's not like a Dansby Swanson situation where it's a wait and see. That Max Fried is a bona fide star.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those pitchers that, he's going to age like a fine wine. Alex Anthopoulos said it this past offseason. To both of your points, he comes back every single offseason with something new. He's working on some aspect of his game. He's just that kind of competitor. To both of y'all's points, that we should all feel comfortable. Who cares about age? I mean, if the GM of the Atlanta Braves is comfortable with him aging into, I think it would probably, most contract projections, he's 36, 37 season. Everybody should be comfortable with that. I mean, we see Charlie Morton, 40 years old out there, still got a ball on a string. So there's no reason to think that Max Fried can't do it either.
Yeah, I mean, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander are both pitching for division rivals and are about to be 40-plus years of age. The thing about the whole contract extension, and this is going to be something we talk about a lot over the years, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think he's getting to the point where, you can't let him get to the offseason. I don't think they can re-sign him anymore. Like I think he's gotten that good. I don't think I don't think Freed's signing an extension unless you give him 200 million bucks. And I don't think he's going to sign that. Like I think 8 for 200 is his minimum. Carlos Rodon got what? 6 for 150. Freed is a better pitcher than Carlos Rodon, and he's done it for longer. I think 8 for 200 is probably his minimum once he hits free agency. So unless the Braves give him something close to that, like maybe 7 for 175 or something right now, where he doesn't have to risk injury, I have a hard time believing that he would sign an extension before hitting free agency. Because if he has another year like that this year and puts in together another one after that, I mean, shit, we might be talking about $250 million. So
every man has a price. And, even if he does have a few down years at the tail end of that contract, if you buy out his prime and you make sure that he's here and they win another championship, I don't see how you can say it's not worth the money, no matter if it does turn a little sour one day. And, that's kind of a common practice in the MLB that the Braves really haven't used. They didn't do it with Freddie Freeman. They definitely didn't do it with Dansby Swanson. But I think Max Fried's a guy that's worth having that conversation.
He could also still be good at age 40.
Yeah. I don't think anybody I haven't seen a single Braves fan, at least on social media, be against any idea of even giving him that $200 million contract. Like, I don't think anybody's against it. Like, everybody loves Max Fried. I think everybody's behind him, and everybody thinks that he can maintain this pace.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying even if it does happen, which there's, like I said, it's not a certainty, it will turn into a Madison Bumgarner type deal, which his is a little different just because he came in free agency. But I have no problem giving him that money. I don't care how much it is to. And, you talk about whenever his extension is going to hit, Marcell Ozuna will be off the books. There's $18 million right there. So,
I mean, Charlie Morton will be off the books too. Like, you got money coming off the books. I mean, listen, the Braves are going to have money to spend. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Because when you talk about their luxury tax payroll, the reason they were in the luxury tax isn't because their payroll they were paying this year. It's because that takes in the AAV of all their contracts. So that's the average annual value of your Acuñas and your Harris and all those guys. So that's why they were really in the luxury tax. But their actual payroll wasn't nearly as high. So something to think about. Another guy, Kyle Wright, he made his second start of the season on Sunday. Looked much better. I mean, his first start was shaky. There was not a lot of control. The stuff was still there, but the control was awful. The second start looked much more like himself. And now you put those two at or near the top of your rotation with Spencer Strider, and Charlie Morton's looked pretty good early this season, and Bryce Elder's looked lights out. This rotation looks pretty damn unbelievable, like I've been preaching.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about Kyle Wright. We've had this conversation on this show before. I'm not worried about him whatsoever. He's going to be just fine. He's ramping back up into things. If you look at his FIP too, it's much lower than his current ERA. Small sample size, but he may have gotten a little unlucky. Why would I ever worry about Kyle Wright? And I think wins are a meaningless stat, but the guy did lead the National League in wins. He was a fantastic pitcher last year. I think he was maybe, 7th in Cy Young voting? There's nothing to worry about with the guy.
Wins and average are meaningless stat unless it's your guy leading the league in it.
Correct. Unless you're just like Luis Arias and have like a 370 batting average or just something disgusting.
He's hitting 500,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like
Ronald's hitting 400 though. Or like 390.
He just keeps hitting, dude.
Ronald's going to win MVP, and that future is looking real tasty, along with my Strider Cy Young future. And
my Michael Harris MVP future is not looking great as he rides the bench with an injury. But I'm excited for this Braves rotation. And speaking of just arms, like in general, like I wrote about a couple of guys that were like J.R. Ritchie and A.J. Smith-Shawver. Like those guys dominated down there. And they're a little ways away, but like those guys could have some potential. And then Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd both pitched really well in their first startings in Gwinnett. And guys, Mike Soroka, like the depth of the pitching is still very apparent, even in a weak farm system.
Yeah, and you talk about Owen Murphy, who was taken ahead of J.R. Ritchie.
Yeah, he had a really good start too.
He came out 4 innings, 6 strikeouts, no runs, and you always want to be, as much as it disgusts me to say this, you always want to be an organization like the Dodgers. If you looked at the Dodgers this year from Baseball America, they still have the number 1 farm system. And that's a team that can win 100-something games. That's where you really want to be, because you can do anything you want. You can call somebody up. You can make a huge trade. You have all of the tools at your disposal to make anything happen. And, if injury does strike, hey, well, we've got the number 15 prospect in all of baseball to come right up and replace him. Or we've got a guy that's hitting, 380. And we've seen that. Michael Harris, Vaughn Grissom, guys like that. It makes a huge difference. Spencer Strider, guys that could come up and give you a spark. Or if you need to go get somebody, like say you need to go get a Brian Reynolds or somebody like that, which I don't think the Braves need to do anymore, but it's there. It's an option. It's on the table.
Yeah, so I want to ask one last thing before we wrap up this segment of the video. Do the Braves, from top to bottom, assuming Elder is a reliable fifth starter, we'll just say reliable. We won't even say he continues at this rate. Do they have the best top to bottom rotation in baseball?
I think you can definitely make the argument, and it's a long season and it gets really subjective, but I would say it's one that you can trust the most. I got to see a little more out of Elder, but we talked about it at the end of last year too. He was pitching just as well, and Charlie Morton has been shaky at
And you
times,
could
but
throw
he's a
Soroka in there too. I'm not afraid to do it at this point. He's in the conversation.
yeah, he's a pretty reliable veteran too with Morton, and I just have a lot of faith in these guys. There's not a day, a couple of weeks ago when we were having to throw out some unknown guys, but if we talk about our healthiest five guys, top to bottom, I'm never worried about anybody. I'm not going out there and saying, well, we don't have it. This isn't like we're throwing out Tommy Malone or Robbie Erlin, and I'm like, well, I hope the offense scores 10 today. I completely trust these guys top to bottom.
I think you can make an argument for any, for the top 3 to 5, and the Braves are certainly in that conversation. So
Tampa, Minnesota, they're up there too. Milwaukee's having a good start, but the Braves, like I said, they've been inflated a little bit by some bad starts from young guys.
Everyone put the Mets at 1, but I've always been skeptical about the Mets keeping Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer at 40 years old healthy for the entire season. I know they've been great over their careers, but you're still trusting on 2 40-year-olds at the top of your rotation. Would it surprise you at all if Max Fried and Spencer Strider both finished in like the top 4 of the NL Cy Young race? It wouldn't surprise me. I'm almost expecting it.
They could almost finish
I was about to say,
I finish 1 and 2, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't want to say I expect it by any means, but I think it's more likely than not. Top 5 at least. Top 5, I think it's more likely than not at this point. Barring health, I'd say I expect